All right, let's get this. All right, let's get this. I screwed this all up. I screwed this all up. There we go. Now we got it. So anyway, I'm just going live. I want to talk about the Minnesota ICE shooting. I have some interesting things to talk about with this. A lot of people aren't going to think so, but I got to tell you, it's just very interesting that we had all this video to look at. And I made some notes, and this is going to be wild. Okay, this is going to be wild, but I think I've figured out what happened, and we're going to have to wait till the investigation's complete. But I think I have this figured out. And just go with me on this. I think you'll find it interesting. I have my reading glasses on, so it's just the way it is. All right. Well, I'm not going to talk about Gregory Bovino right away, or Kristi Noem. I'll talk about that after. And I'll also talk about Walz and Mayor Fry. But what I want to talk about is the actual shooting itself. Now, first, before I get into the shooting itself, I want to discuss the Second Amendment. I voted for President Trump. I love President Trump. But I don't like his commentary on the protest, asking why somebody would bring a firearm to a protest. Well, a protest is a First Amendment right, and the Second Amendment is your right to bear arms. And you have a right to protect yourself. So you show up to a protest to counter-protest or to protest for something. There is nothing in the Second Amendment that says, you can't bring your firearm to a public protest. Some states have laws where you cannot go to a protest armed. That's a local thing. That's democratic. It's what people want or voted for, whatever you want to call it. But my personal experience is during COVID and the pandemic we had here in Maine, we were locked down pretty significantly. And therefore, we had the Antifa stuff going on, rioting across the country. It was getting violent, and we weren't there protesting for Black Lives Matter or anything like that. It was just a lockdown. But we were concerned that some people were going to come over and start some problems, which a couple of people did, okay? But when all that rioting started, people showed up to protest, and they brought their firearms with them, because in Maine you have constitutional carry. You can carry long guns, and in fact there was one guy that had an AR style rifle. He had his tack gear on and stuff like that. He was from a gun club around here. Perfectly legal. And this was at the Capitol. So the Capitol Police were there. Everything's legal. And what I found interesting is most people, when they carry concealed. Like this Mr. Pretti that got shot in Minneapolis did. He was also licensed, and I'm assuming that he was trained because he didn't have a piece of junk. He had a Sig Sauer AXG P320, but this was the Sig Custom Works. Those go for $1,100 to $1,500. Plus, I could tell from the photo that was released that it was customized. He had a custom magwell on it, and also noticed that the slide was FDE And I think almost all of those are sold with a black slide. And the lower down here is black, and the slide is FDE. This is a Canic TPS series. Check to make sure it's clear. So he had a firearm that was about this size, a little shorter for carry, compact. It's not a subcompact, it's just a compact. So anyway, he's at this protest. He's got a firearm that is known to have issues, even though this was the SIG custom one. And the reason why I mention that is these are the firearms that have a propensity to allegedly go off by themselves, which I don't believe they do. But what I think they have is once you're cocked, there has been incidences where you just barely push or on the slide and it will release the striker and fire. That seems to have been demonstrated well enough to my satisfaction, and Sig Sauer is in lawsuits for that. So you can see where I'm going with this, and I'll get to why I'm talking about this with regard to the Minnesota shooting. Well, that's the firearm he had. Now, what I noticed is it had a really nice flat trigger, and I know they sell some of them with that, and some of them have a curved trigger. So I'm not very familiar with the Sig Sauer SIG custom works, okay, the high-endy ones, which is what this guy had. He didn't have a piece of junk, okay? And again, he wasn't doing anything illegal, legally carrying. I highly encourage people to carry even to a protest, okay? So we saw this commentary from Gregory Bovino. We saw this commentary from Christy Noam. We've seen commentary like that from Pam Bondi. We've seen comments like that from President Trump, okay? None of these guys should have been saying anything like that, okay? You have a Second Amendment right to carry a firearm in a state wherever it is legally allowed to carry it. Okay, so if your state bans you from carrying a firearm at a protest, then don't bring a firearm to a protest, all right? But there was nothing improper about this guy bringing a firearm to a protest. Now, some people would say, well, he was on the home team. He didn't have a need to bring one because he's the one that's on the offense protesting against who's there. But you never know if you're going to run into a counter protester, which is what I ran into in Augusta, Maine here. Long story short, this guy was getting into it with this woman, yelling in her face. He was a leftist, trying to agitate and cause problems. Probably about 24 years old. And I got in between her and him because, you know, that's what you do. You protect the woman. I don't know who she was. And, you know, this guy was hitting into her pretty hard. And this guy had his girlfriend with him. And I did not carry to this protest. So that's why I'm mentioning it. I was not carrying at the time. I didn't feel there was a need for it. The world has changed a lot since 2020. And today I would not go anywhere without one. And I don't. So what happened is this guy was yelling at her and I got in between and I was getting into it with him. And I had my bullhorn. So this guy is yelling right in my face. So I put my bullhorn between me and him. And I was saying stuff to him through the bullhorn. I wasn't antagonizing or threatening him. I was just telling him that leftists are lost in space. They're loons, and you're acting like a crazy person. And I know there are security cameras all around the Capitol here. So everything that was going on was being recorded. That occurred to me while it was going on. So, you know, you just be normal. Don't go crazy. And I have a lot of patience. So anyway, I was smiling at this guy. And and, kind of being wise-assish, that's what I was doing. But I noticed that every once in a while, he had his backpack he was carrying like this. So the top of it was right here. And he had a brown paper bag on top. And it didn't occur to me until after all of this that he had a gun in that bag. Because every once in a while, he would reach into the bag. All right, you see how that's pointing at the camera? He would reach into the bag and go, and his girl was like, no, 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 no. And then he'd stop. And then he'd do it again. And it didn't occur to me at the time that this guy I never saw the gun, but I know he had a gun in the bag. I just know he did. Now I do with hindsight. Oh, I could have got shot right in the face by a lunatic, like point blank. So that really opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I'm telling you right now, if you're going to go to a protest and you're not intending to have any kind of friction with anybody, this was before that violence was breaking out. This was before George Floyd. So we were protesting before that happened. It was around May, beginning of June. I think the George Floyd thing happened not too long after that. But they were already set off, okay? So, which I blame the media for. But basically, that's what was going on. And that really opened my eyes that from now on, everywhere I go, I'm going to realize who I'm talking to is possibly a lunatic and maybe not be so antagonistic as I was, okay? So we learned lessons from that. Now, Mr. Pretti in Minnesota did not learn that lesson because since this happened, we found out that 2 weeks before the incident that took his life, he got into it with ICE officers previously, had a scuffle with them. And one of the ICE officers had him on the ground. They had him pinned down, and Mr. Pretti fractured a rib. Okay, now we know that. Information was released after the fact. So I believe he was going there to protest and possibly be antagonistic. Now, Stephen Miller, Trump's immigration guru, more or less, policy, and also a speechwriter for President Trump for quite a while, he said that this guy was showing up to possibly assassinate ICE officers. Well, there's absolutely no evidence of that. And I think a lot of the things that the Trump administration did when this happened, I wish they could take it back. That was one of them. The proper answer would have been, this incident happened. We don't know why he was there. Maybe he was there to do this. Maybe he was there to do that. Let's wait for the investigation and find out what the answer is. That's an easy answer. And they didn't do that. So that led to Kristi Noem being taken off that, as well as Gregory Bovino being taken off that as well, and sending Tom Homan in. Now, Tom Homan, very well respected, given a medal for 920,000 deportations under Obama. So Obama gave him a medal. There was a ceremony at the White House. Tom Homan's a hero when the Democrats cared about immigration, because they know people care about immigration. And I'll start off by the next segment of just saying that I want legal immigration. People vetted properly. Come one, come all to America. We love you, okay? Brown skin, Asian, whatever you are, we don't care. Come here legally and have something to offer and not be a problem. and be willing to assimilate to the American lifestyle and be an American. That's all we want. We get called racist for that because we don't want illegals here and people dumped out of mental asylums. And, this happened in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s under Jimmy Carter. 77, 78, 79, around there. Cuba emptied their jails. They sent their worst people here to Florida and cross. This is an opportunity because it costs a lot of money to keep these people in prison, feed them. And, that's a good way to lower your costs as a government is you send everybody to another country. That's what Venezuela did, Honduras, El Salvador, all these other countries. And they crossed the border into America under Biden because they stupidly told people to come here. So now we have the problems we have. So now in this segment, I'm going to get into what actually happened. It's all on video, several angles. The best angle I wanted to see, unfortunately, is the one from furthest away. And you have to zoom up on it and the picture gets blurry. But that's the video we have. Somebody shot with a cell phone. It's the most important video combined with another one. So what happened is this guy shows up, okay? He shows up. This box of bullets here is going to be a camera. He's holding a camera in his hand. Okay. He's filming. ICE has got a warrant. They're there legally, lawfully, constitutionally, upholding the laws passed by Congress, federal laws. The media has all kinds of talking points online where they're not police officers. Well, nobody said they were police officers. They're law enforcement officers. They enforce federal law. So if you want to dicker around whether or not they police, which is the problem. The police department in Minnesota was told to stand down. So while Mr. Pretti is out in the street where he shouldn't be, obstructing ICE, getting in front of vehicles, he's actually directing traffic. You see the video. He's waving the car, go by, go by. He shouldn't have been out in the street. He's interfering with a crime scene, criminal apprehension operation by ICE, who are legally there lawfully to serve a warrant for a criminal. So he's out there and this other woman's on the sidewalk screaming at them, which is fine. Protest is fine. Stand on the sidewalk, out of the way, without interfering. Stop getting in front of vehicles. Stop throwing things, chunks of ice, things like that. So this woman is yelling at this ICE officer, who is actually a paramilitary border patrol agent there to support ICE. They're doing what the police department in Minneapolis should have been doing. You need that buffer in between ICE doing their job and people protesting. So these people try to make it like, oh, you just don't want people to protest. That's not what anybody is saying. So don't twist that into something it isn't. Protest peacefully on the sidewalk. You have the First Amendment right to do that. You also have the Second Amendment right to carry if you're going to do that, which is what Mr. Pretti was doing. Perfect. Okay, everything's fine. Then she goes out into the street to confront this guy, this Border Patrol agent. The agent gives her a shove. Get out of here. She's not listening. So he gives her a really hard shove, okay? And that's what the media doesn't tell you. They just show you the part where he just shoves her really hard. They didn't show what happened before that, which also included Mr. Pretti getting in the agent's face, okay? So he's telling them to stop. And this agent tells Mr. Pretti, back off. You're interfering and obstructing with this, that, or the other thing. You can see that on the video. Mr. Pretti then inserts himself in between her and the Border Patrol agent because Mr. Pretti didn't like the agent pushing her like he did. So now she's hanging on to Mr. Pretti because she's losing her balance. Mr. Pretti is now fighting off the border agent. And now they're getting in a tussle. And we all know what happened after that. So Mr. Pretti had an opportunity to walk away from that and not do that. And he made a poor choice. So he had his camera. He's still holding on to his camera. Okay, I'd like to see the footage that he shot is what I would like to see, because this camera was around the whole time this was happening. In fact, I think he had it in his hand or a cell phone or something. So he was either recording with a cell phone or a camera. To me, it looked like an actual square device, a camera. So now we're going to get to the part that I wanted to talk about. That's probably taken me too long to get to it, but that's okay. It's the firearm itself. Remember I was talking about the Sig Sauer AXG P320, which has a propensity to fire on its own, even though it doesn't. You can just touch the slide a certain way and it'll fire. There are several lawsuits from military and also law enforcement. One officer that has a lawsuit, he was standing in an emergency room, had his gun holstered, minding his own business, arms crossed, talking to somebody, his legs were crossed, leaning on a doorway, and the gun went off by itself because he applied some pressure on the slide in his holster. I'm assuming, I think that's what's going to come out in the lawsuits. And he shot himself in the leg, was very severely injured, and his career is over. So he's filing a lawsuit because now he can't earn a living with what he trained to do, and he has that right. So SIG won't admit that their gun does that. But if you call them and you own one, they'll take the firearm back and they'll replace the trigger group with one that isn't so sensitive. So on the videos, I should say, there is one clip where you can actually see a bullet ricocheting off the pavement. It's been making its rounds on social media. And I talked about this Sunday with my brother. So I can verify that I identified this as a possibility before people were talking about it, because I was analyzing the video and I saw what happened. What struck out to me was Mr. Pretti was on the ground and you hear a gunshot. And then you see Mr. Pretti, like a panic, trying to stand up. And as he's trying to stand up, he's putting his hand behind him to go to his holster, which no longer had the firearm in it because the officer had taken the firearm, as we saw in the video, took his firearm. And when he did, he goes, gun, gun, gun. Almost immediately after that, you hear a gunshot. And then the other officers open fire and shoot Mr. Pretti dead. Unfortunately, I wish that had not happened. Nobody deserves to die like that. But what happened is, there's two possibilities in my opinion. Because it was a SIG Custom Works pistol, he may have replaced the trigger group with one that gives you, out of habit, we'll make sure it's clear, even though I did. May have replaced it with one that you don't need this much take up. This is a Canic pistol, it's not a Sig Sauer, but just for demonstration purposes. So he may have slicked up his trigger, put custom springs in it, did something to make it like a 3-pound pull instead of a 4 or 5. So I'm guessing he did something like that. We'll wait for the investigation and the forensics done on the pistol. But you have to remember, the temperature that day was bitter cold. If you've ever been in bitter cold, you'll understand that you're going to wear gloves. Now, he was wearing tactical gloves, which they're a little thicker than regular knit gloves that you could put in a trigger guard easily. But I believe he was carrying the pistol properly. But if you look at the video, he's carrying the pistol similar to this. He's got it like this. Like, I took his pistol out of his holster and I'm carrying it like this. He doesn't have it like this, like he should. So I don't know what hand that officer normally shoots. If he's a lefty, maybe because he's a lefty, he's holding it like this. But he either hit the trigger with his finger by accident, and when you're wearing gloves, you can't feel the trigger. I think he did that with a custom trigger that was easy to pull, combined with the fact that the SIG sometimes goes off. So either the SIG went off because he was holding the slide, which we've seen people make it fire that way with a cartridge in it that just had a primer and no bullet and no powder, just to demonstrate how easy it can fire. There's videos on YouTube of people doing that. You can check those out if you like. So he takes the gun out of Mr. Pretti's holster, Mr. Pretti's gun. He's carrying it off. And as he's carrying it off, you hear it after he goes, gun, 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 takes the gun. Split second, there's a gunshot. You can actually see a couple of officers looking around like they don't know what's going on, but they heard gun, gun, gun. So then the guy pulls his gun out and points it at Mr. Pretti and fires. That's the video that the leftists are using, like he had executed him. That's not the shot. Because when that first shot went off, Mr. Pretti tries to stand up and reach behind him to go for his gun that's no longer there. He was not shot. He was not wounded on that first shot. And Mr. Pretti didn't have a gun and didn't take a shot. So logic would say a gun went off that the officers didn't know about. So there was a surprise accidental discharge or a defective firearm discharge. That's going to be one of those two things. I will guarantee you that's what they rule, which obviously the left is going to go, oh, they're covering it up. They're lying. Guns don't go off by themselves. So I think it's going to be accidental. And almost every law enforcement agency has a clause in their statute. It's almost all the same everywhere in every state. For lethal shootings for a police officer, quote, okay, it's almost quoted, quote, without full benefit of hindsight. That is the legal clause. In other words, the police don't have video replay. They don't have Zapruder film frame by frame analyzing everything. You have a split second. Gun, gun, gun. Gun goes off. Well, the person that you are detaining, you're going to assume that guy is shooting. So they return fire. That's a natural human instinct. Nobody's going to be found at fault in this shooting. That's the other thing. An accidental discharge happens on duty. So whether that gun went off by itself or the officer accidentally hit the trigger because he was wearing thick gloves and couldn't feel it good enough, combined with the fact if you've ever shot outdoors in the wintertime and then you shoot a firearm that's not yours, it feels different. You take a second to get used to the size of the trigger guard. This guy just takes the gun out and walks off with it. So you can see the way he was holding it. And there's also a frame in the far off video that's blurred, where for a split second, you can see the slide back. So that tells me that the gun fired because you can see some of the barrel like that. So that gun fired. I am absolutely sure of it. While he was carrying it, it went off, hit the pavement, missed Mr. Pretti just after he had said gun, gun, gun. So the cops shot the guy in the street. And it's going to turn out to be a legal killing that was accidental. There's not going to be any charges. Nobody's going to be held accountable for it because that sort of thing happens when they're on duty. And there is no legal. Officers are protected from murder charges unless you're in a place like Minneapolis and they need to have somebody meat to throw to the public so you don't have a riot or something, which we've seen happen before. I'm not going to get into all that. So anyway, that is my basic analysis from that. Take with it what you want. And since I came up with that, I did see a report in the New York Post that the DHS, an anonymous source, said that it looks like the gun went off. It was accidental, is what it says, but it could be, it just happens to be a Sig Sauer P320, the same firearm that goes off easily on other people that use them in the military and police force. So just something to chew on, okay? And so anyway, to recap, I really didn't like Kristi Noem's comments on the Second Amendment, trying to tell people to leave their guns at home. They got no business saying that. That's, to me, that's the equivalent of saying, if you go to a protest, there are certain words you can't say. Don't say these words. Something violent might happen. And we don't do that. The First Amendment says free speech. Second Amendment says right to bear arms. It doesn't say right to bear arms unless you're here or unless you're there or unless this is going on. It doesn't say that. So, I mean, I love this administration. I love President Trump. I love Kristi Noem. I love Kash Patel. And I love all these people. But all of these top people in the Trump administration all said you shouldn't bring a gun to a protest. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. It was wrong for them to say that. I will stick by that. President Trump changed his comments a little bit after that. So, but, past comments from Pam Bondi on the Second Amendment. I had a long discussion on one of my walks about that, where they were saying, trans people, somebody in the Department of Justice said trans people should not be allowed to own firearms. And I'm like, nah, the Second Amendment applies to everybody. Gun Owners of America, the NRA, they both came out and said, no, Pam Bondi shouldn't have said that. Gun rights are for everybody. It's for the left, it's for the right, it's for the people you don't like, it's for the guy that lives next door that you can't stand, it's for the person that lives next door that you absolutely love, okay? It's for everybody, okay? It doesn't discriminate. So Pam Bondi, basically anybody in the Department of Justice that utters something like that should be fired. They should lose their job, because especially if they're associated with the ATF. Now, Kash Patel had similar comments, and for a while he was running the ATF before they got a guy in there. So a lot of these people, I don't agree with their, they come out and say, we love the Second Amendment, everybody should do that, but then they say things like that. And, we can't have that. We just can't. Just my opinion. So anyway, I do want to end this because I want to get back to the Trump accounts press conference today. Trump has given a speech. Basically, I'll just run down for a limited time while President Trump is in office. I hope this continues through Congress after, or the next president continues it. But we have the Trump accounts. And what that is for every child, if you register at trumpaccounts.com, every child that's born has $1,000 from the Treasury deposited into an account, which will accrue interest over time, compound interest. So you'll have money put in there, which will accrue interest, and your parents or your employer can pay money directly into that. It is the S&P 500. And what's good about that is it runs at about 7% after inflation. So by the time somebody's 18 and you put $1,000 in there, and let's say a company or your parents put in $5,000 a year, you could end up with $170,000 in your bank account that you would get when you were 18 years old. And if you left it in there until you were 35, you'd have $700,000 in there with compound interest and adding money to it yourself yearly or your employer. So this would actually be kind of like a retirement account, but it's your account. And That would mean, and why it's important is somebody that is born, and let's say their mother and father, the mother's, let's say it's a single mother, and there's no father around. That's pretty common these days. And she's a waitress making peanuts. Some waitresses do good. I'm not belittling waitresses. I'm just saying whoever's in the lower tier of income, whatever it may be, and you have a child that's born, they'll have $1,000 put in there by the U.S. Treasury. So they're already on their way to have that money compound in interest until they're 18 years old. It adds up. So that's really good money for people. It's a good idea. I hope it takes off and it really works out. And all right, so that's what I wanted to discuss about the shooting in Minnesota with ICE. Again, ICE is legally allowed to be there lawfully, constitutionally upholding federal laws. The Minnesota Police Department should have been a buffer in between the people protesting, allowing people full protest, First Amendment right, because the left always says, oh, you just don't want people to protest. Like I'm saying the police shouldn't allow people. It's not what I'm saying. And ICE to carry out their job that they're constitutionally bound to do to uphold laws of Congress. They have every authority to be there and do that. They have a warrant, they're arresting a criminal. Nothing the state or local police can do about it. So they made the really poor choice by Mayor Fry to stand down and have their officers not do anything, which is what Portland, Oregon did during the riots. So even if they're going to arrest protesters who are getting out of hand, then slap them on the wrist and let them out, then later on, that's better than what they've been doing. So you need that buffer in between to keep the, if ICE is this murderous bunch of Gestapo heathens, Nazis, and well, then why don't you have the police in there protecting your citizens from the Nazis? And they're not even doing that. They want this to happen. They want the chaos. So it looks like they've reached some kind of deal. President Trump called Walz personally. And apparently, I don't know what they worked out for a deal, but they worked something out. So the people that are already in prison, illegals, are going to be turned over to ICE. Local law enforcement is now going to be assisting. And so they're doing what they should have done to begin with, because I think Trump told them we're not leaving. So all you're going to do is you're getting people killed. I think that's probably what he told them. I don't, a lot of people are speculating maybe they're going to, let him off with some of the fraud charges coming up against Walz and cut him some slack in exchange. Nah, I don't believe there's anything like that. There's a lot of conspiracy stuff online. So the last thing I'm going to talk about before I sign off, Ilhan Omar. She was given a speech and somebody sprayed some stuff on her. She's all upset about it. Oh my God, the right are, oh, look what you did. You're accusing me of fraud. You demonized me and now I got attacked. Well, I'm going to tell you right here, and we don't know for sure, this is my opinion, that was staged. You watch the video, that guy does not look like somebody that would be doing that. And the way he did it was almost like bad acting. It was really comical. And it's just unidentified chemical, it says, and it's just stuff that smells bad. Joke stuff. Probably something that smells like farts. You know what I mean? Kind of a gag spray thing. Fart spray. We've seen that. It's a gag item you can buy. I'll bet you that's what they used. So I really think that was staged. It's really pathetic. I think, my personal opinion, okay, I'm not being defamatory. I don't want to get sued. My personal opinion, that's all it is, with no evidence yet. I think she's guilty of a lot of fraud and laundering money. Her husband is involved with an LLC, has to do with a winery. He's been under investigation since they were investigating him while Biden was in office. So this isn't new. And They have a fake address that doesn't exist. The website doesn't work. And the telephone that they have for the LLC doesn't work. Nothing works. It's just an LLC. It doesn't cost much money to set one up. Then you're officially a limited liability company. And they're associated with some wine company out of California. Now, there's no evidence of this, but a lot of these politicians in California have vineyards. Okay, I've noticed that. Gavin Newsom is very wealthy. He owns a vineyard. Nancy Pelosi, associated with a vineyard, California. And now Ilhan Omar in Minnesota is associated with a vineyard in California. We'll find out more on that, I'm sure. So anyway, thank you very much for checking this out. I hope you enjoyed it. I didn't get any chats in the chat room, even though people are watching, according to my stats on here. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And remember to be safe with your firearm, respect the Second Amendment. And yes, you have a right to carry a firearm if you are legally allowed to do so to a protest. Don't let anybody tell you different. That's a conservative. It really upset me to see conservatives turn on the Second Amendment when it applies to protest. All right, somebody sent a comment on here. I was curious what your take was due to your Second Amendment advocacy and support for carrying firearms where allowed. Okay, well, I was kind of talking about that. My take is the Second Amendment applies to everything and everywhere. There's no subtext clauses. You have a right to carry a firearm. You have a right to bring it everywhere it's legally allowed for whatever reason you see fit. You want to go to a protest and you're worried something's going to happen and you could get hurt and you need protection. Well, Second Amendment says you can protect yourself with a firearm. It's really not even up for debate. So when President Trump said that, Kristi Noem, Gregory Bovino, Kash Patel, they came out and said, Pam Bondi too, why are you bringing a firearm to a protest? News pundits on Fox News said the same thing. It's like, guys, you know, somebody was killed. It's unfortunate. Let's have an investigation. Don't start throwing around obvious things like you shouldn't have a gun at a protest. You shouldn't brandish a gun at a protest. That's not good. That's incitement. That's probably criminal. In Maine, if you brandish your firearm, it's criminal threatening. There is a criminal charge for that, and probably in most states, if not all. So you can carry it legally, concealed, or open. I would not bring an open carry to a protest because somebody could take it from you if you're not paying attention. I did that once at the protest here during the lockdowns when Antifa was going crazy. Not just me, there was somebody carrying a long gun, open carry, with Capitol Police around. And I was carrying open, and so were about 24 other people, 25 I counted. It was like one of those things where we're going to show you we're carrying, so don't start any crap with us because we're all armed. That's basically it. Just developed on its own that way. People intuitively just said, I'm going to bring a firearm and I'm going to open carry, let them know that we're going to protect our people. So don't start any problems. And that's what the Second Amendment's for. So to answer your question, Michael, that's Second Amendment advocacy, yes. Absolutely support everything about it. And as I stated a few minutes ago, a bunch of conservatives after a mass shooting that some crazy person, trans person did. And, you know, I've said it on my walks. I hate transgender ideology, but I don't mind transsexuals. People in this country can be what they want to be. They're 18 and over. God bless you. Okay? That's between you and Jesus. So seeing conservatives saying that trans people shouldn't own guns was a mistake. We have a far left extremism problem in this country, and they have a propensity for violence. Being trans had nothing to do with it. We see this we're watching this with leftists in Minnesota. They're very vindictive personalities. They get angry and they answer their problems and solve them with violence. So it's a far left extremism violence problem. Just my opinion. Again, just my opinion. Anyways, thank you very much for asking that question. And I've been on for almost 47 minutes. I don't have too much to talk about on here besides Governor Walz and Mayor Fry. I still can't believe that they were saying the rhetoric they did. The Anne Frank comments from Walz, and he's been doing this since, President Trump had the Madison Square Garden event in New York. And they were making comparisons to Nazi rallies. Trump's a dictator, all this other stuff. And the people that support him are Nazis. So he called me a Nazi. And that event happened with Ilhan Omar, and Governor Walz has to go make a post on social media saying, we have to tone down this rhetoric. Demonizing public officials is leading to violence. After the things that they say, it's like, oh my God, are you friggin' kidding me? Are you kidding me to even say something that asinine after the behavior that people like you and Gavin Newsom and that Pritzker idiot in Illinois, and these people are dangerous. I absolutely firmly believe that the left Democratic Party has been taken over by socialists and communists. They're dangerous. They are no longer bipartisan. There's no, we still get this filibuster thing in the Senate. That's a gentleman's agreement. That's not constitutional. That can be dissolved by either party at any time if they get the votes. Democrats tried to do it already. Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema objected to that, and they were rewarded by being forced out of the party, and now they are no longer senators. That's how the Democratic Party rolls. They have the testicles and the cojones to do what they need to do to have absolute ultimate power. They're brutal. When they're in power again, they are going to prosecute everybody associated with Trump. They're going to investigate their families, bank accounts, everything. They're going to lock up who they can. When they arrest Peter Navarro for not showing up to Congress, he was shackled at the airport. Roger Stone had an armed team with semi-automatic weapons, TAC gear, raiding him at 6 o'clock in the morning after tipping off CNN so they could record it, which is obvious. And James Comey gets indicted, and just come in at your leisure. We don't arrest people and put on a spectacle. And the Republicans are too nice. I'm just saying, they're just too nice, and it's going to be our end. We have to get tough with these guys. Former President Clinton and Hillary Clinton refused to show up for congressional subpoenas. Republicans do that, they end up in prison. Peter Navarro, what's-his-face, Bannon from the War Room, Steve Bannon. And, Bill Clinton couldn't even be bothered to just show up with his attorney, and his attorney say, don't answer that. Don't answer that. The fifth, don't answer that. They're just trying to humiliate you in public. Don't answer that. Didn't even bother. We're just not going to show up. Nobody's going to do anything about it. We'll never be charged. Well, the committee held a vote to hold them in contempt. Republicans voted to hold them in contempt. And charges are going to be referred to the Department of Justice. And I fully expect that there will be charges. And if there isn't, well, a lot of people are going to be really pissed off, including me. Nobody's above the law. No one's above the law. Well, except Democrats. Footnoted asterisk. And that's what it looks like to me. So we got to get tough and stop screwing around here. Anyway, that's all I'm going to talk about. That's all I made for my notes. I could talk for another couple hours, but I think an hour is long enough. So anyways, my friends, thank you for talking live with Beau, talking with Beau. Let's call it that, talking with Beau. I don't have all the software to put all this video up on a screen, and I don't like doing that anyway. This account's not monetized. I'm just on here because I like talking and talking about this stuff. I don't make any money from this at all. So I don't have any of that software to picture-in-picture video and stop it. And, Bill Clinton said today, you play the clip. Oh, then I pause it and talk for 20 minutes about, just play the clip. Just play the friggin' clip. People aren't stupid, right? I mean, I can talk about a clip. You want to see the clip? Go watch the clip, right? So I'm taking kind of the Hickok 45 approach where you just turn a camera on and talk. There's no editing. So there you go. Anyways, I just gave my opinion on this stuff. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you on the next live, whenever that is. And thanks a lot for being here. I really, really appreciate that very much. So God bless you and your family. God bless President Trump and the country. Say a prayer for the country. We got a lot of stuff coming up. The Armada is approaching Iran. Something's going to happen with that, I'm pretty sure. And it's been long overdue. It turns out that a lot more people have been killed than people thought, like thousands and thousands of people protesting the government. So that might end up being the subject of my next live. So thank you for watching. God bless you guys. Bye-bye.